My name's Brad. This is Susan. We work with Moving Human Spirit, and our company is involved with not only being the global leaders in trauma-informed coaching certification, but we're also the world's first trauma-informed coach training, recognized and accredited through the International Coaching Federation. And we also actively work with trauma survivors and their families in the many areas that trauma presents itself. So again, we're going to be recording this today for those who may not be able to make it. We've had quite a few sign up, so we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to actually hear this talk. So before we get too far into our discussion today, what I'd like to do is just warmly invite you to come to this present moment. And I'd like to do that just by inviting you to take some nice deep breaths. If you're sitting down, please just push your buttocks down into your seat, relax your arms to your side, and take a nice deep breath. And a nice exhale. And continue to do that. And as you are, I just want you to be curious about what you're grateful for in this particular moment that we're getting together. What you're grateful for in the learning that we're going to share here today. Thinking about what it is that brought you to this particular conversation, to the trauma-informed coaching skills, what tweaked your interest. As you're taking some nice deep breaths, just recognizing where you are in your space in the here and now. And being aware of your body and any needs that you have. So feeling as though you're capable of taking care of anything that comes up for you out of curiosity, and knowing that you're in a safe space to be able to be here and have this discussion today. Take another nice deep breath. And a nice big exhale. And one more for good measure. As we invite in calming the vagus nerve, the parasympathetic, that's what we're doing when we take those nice deep breaths. So what I'd like to do before we get into some of the top skills of trauma-informed coaching, I'd like to ensure that we're all aware of the definition of what trauma is, and also that we know exactly what trauma-informed coaching is. So trauma is described in the dictionary as something that's deeply distressing or disturbing. So any experiences that are deeply distressing or disturbing. And there are three main areas of trauma that are defined. So one of those areas being an acute trauma. And when we're thinking about an acute trauma, we're looking at an isolated event. So that's those one-time events that happen. So if I think about an isolated event, I think about things such as an accident. I think about natural disasters. I think about something such as a robbery or a shooting. Sometimes we refer to them as other crimes to your person. The second piece of trauma that we work in as a definition is what's referred to as chronic. Chronic trauma is exposure to multiple long-term and prolonged distressing events. And it's extended over a period of time. So that's why we refer to it as being chronic, because it's happening more than once. And it tends to go over an extended period of time. We think about things such as illness. Sometimes we look at sexual abuse, bullying, discrimination, exposure to extreme situations, domestic violence, racism, war. Those are things that we can look at under the chronic lens and understand that the piling on of different situations ends up with what we refer to as chronic trauma. And then there's one more that we talk about within our work, and that is referred to as complex trauma. And complex trauma holds one other thing that's interesting compared to chronic, and it has to do with adverse childhood experiences. So what we see in complex trauma, it's when one experiences multi-layered traumatic circumstances, often of an invasive or interpersonal nature, particularly in childhood. So we're looking at things such as child abuse, neglect, adverse childhood experiences, violence in the family, the home, or the community, genocide, surviving war-torn environments, if there has also been adverse childhood experiences, cultural dislocation. So the complex is when we have grown up in an environment that we may not have all of the eligible, what's the right word? The eligible things that are needed to actually perform highly in environments, to be able to process. So things such as poverty, we think about being in a cultural dislocation. We think about not being able to be in a supported family. Some of these things can actually move into environments on top of all of the other things that are coming up, and that is referred to as a complex trauma. So it's interesting to think about the things that affect each one of the traumas, whether they're acute, which is an immediate trauma, whether they're chronic, thinking about it going over an extended period of time, or whether it's complex. And again, we think about a complex trauma from the respect of there's already adverse childhood experiences, and then the person has gone on through their lives and have developed other maladaptive behaviors that show up as a result, not only of traumas that they're undergoing in the environment they're in, but also as a result of the adverse childhood experiences that they had. So the interesting thing that I always say about trauma that we want to always remember is that trauma does not discriminate. So there's not any one person that is free from trauma. Trauma is also completely unique experience depending on the person. So no two traumas are alike. It's why you might find sometimes you'll have someone that goes through the exact same event and they will experience it completely different. So those experiences of trauma, we look at them as negative, distressing, and emotionally intense. And the negative effects of trauma, of course, can really affect who we are, our identity, and our place in the world. It can also induce the feeling of having no control over what's happening. So those are some of the pieces of trauma and what we look at. What I'd like to do today is actually talk about some of the skills. So if we think about the idea of trauma-informed coaching, which is when a coach understands what's coming up within the session with a client. So in trauma-informed coaching, what we do is we have this ability to understand trauma, how it shows up within the session, and in what way to respond to it within the established coaching boundaries and contractual agreements. Trauma-informed coaching is that ability to really set in coach position and to conduct a coaching session in a way that's going to still contractually agree with what we do as coaches. So what I mean by that is that in trauma-informed, we're non-clinical. We do not diagnose, we do not treat, and we do not heal. Healing is the work of the client. We're simply there to guide what happens within the imprint and what shows up within the sessions. So within this organized set of skills that we look at, I was thinking about the talk that we would be having today and leaving enough time for questions and answers. And I thought I really want to focus in on some of the things that in our work we believe are top skills. And I just wanted to emphasize some of the things that come up for us in our work. I'm going to touch on each of them individually, but I'm really going to allow at the end when we have a question and answer for you to ask any questions. So please feel free to make some notes as we go through this. So when it comes to trauma-informed coaching, one of the things that stand out for most of us is that we must have a listening skill that goes beyond what we are hearing directly. So what I mean by that is we want to be able to incorporate our listening skills through that trauma lens. We call it in trauma coaching immersed listening. And immersed listening actually happens. It's a listening style when we learn to be able to go beyond what is in the immediate conversation. And what I mean by that is that we're starting to employ a deeper context that takes into consideration the whole person. And what I mean it takes into consideration the whole person, what we're talking about is we're talking about the traumatic imprint that may have happened. We're talking about the belief container that the client may perceive their world by. We're also talking about the cultural, social environments that they're in or that they've been brought up in. So listening at this level for deeper understanding and what the client may not even know that they are offering to us as information. We're holding a very different mindset here, not only listening to what's going on for the client, but also sorting and putting together the information that they're offering through a lens of their social cultural experience. And that's an incredibly interesting place for us to be, and how we hold that and how they hold it based on their philosophical and spiritual views. So when we start listening at that level, we are gathering information that is much deeper than what we may be hearing on the surface. So when we're listening at that deeper level, that immersed listening, we're sorting for that information. So that is the key. And we're doing it, filtering it through all of this internal perception that the client has in front of us. So as we do that, oops, sorry, I have just a few more over here at the side. Oh, thank you, Ashley. So it makes sense to me in this regard, of course, that the next skill that comes up is to be able to build the ability to ask short and precise questions. So if we go into environments where we've built rapport with clients and we have trust and we've built trust and rapport with them, then we also want to be able to, when we're listening at these deeper levels, we want to be able to then be able to ask short, precise questions. And in coaching, we refer to those as powerful questions. So as we think about the trauma-informed lens and being able to ask these short, precise questions that are powerful, the reason that we are attuned to doing that is because those are the questions that will make great shifts and move the client from being stuck to unstuck. And the reason that that happens is because we're allowing the time for the client to work. We're allowing the time for them to process, and we are able to hear what's coming up for them. And then as they're able to process those different ideas in their head around the trauma, about how they hold the trauma, about their environments, how they feel about it philosophically or spiritually, we're able to ask short questions of them that help them focus in, become very precise in what's happening, but moreover, engage with their prefrontal cortex, which in trauma-informed work, what we want to do is always help the client engage with the prefrontal cortex. And the reason that we do that is that we want to be able to work within the executive brain for logical level thinking and to help them make plans and decisions based in the prefrontal cortex and not the fear brain. And in the course, we learn about moving out of the fear brain and moving into the area of what we call post-traumatic growth. And we do that by engaging the client and getting them to the prefrontal cortex. I just want to check in. Are there any questions so far before I get too much further into this? Is everyone hearing me okay and it's all good? Okay. Oh, yes, Vanny.
Hi, yeah, thanks for offering questions midway through the session. Essentially, as you're talking about moving clients into their prefrontal cortex, I'm curious what, if any, somatic or somatosensory practices the trauma-informed coaching umbrella embraces or supports, because to move in, sometimes if you're dysregulated, it's hard to do it top down.
Yeah. So what we do is bottom up and top down. So I always think that in co-creating that relationship with the client, one of the things that we do at Moving the Human Spirit, of course, if you think about the different ways that we're impacting the client, we're really coming from the body, mind, spirit connection. So when we think about that, we're really trying to get away from talk only therapy, and we're really trying to move into actually working with the client in recognizing things such as a couple of the pieces off the top of my head that I'm passionate about, of course, not only the conversations that we have around the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and the intrinsic nervous system, but also when we talk about vagal movement throughout the body. More importantly for me too is getting clients to really understand the gut-brain connection and the heart-brain connection, and really being able to move to and trust some of these other areas that people are not asking questions of. How does that feel in your heart? So if a client is trapped sometimes even within the logical levels, being able to move them back into the body to really be able to understand the not only the emotional intelligence, being able to put language to emotions, but to be able to express what's going on for them, and where does that show up? And how does that impact the entire organism itself? And how might we move you from this place of not knowing to knowing? What is the wisdom of the heart? What is your gut saying about this situation currently? So if they're locked in this place of not being able to access logical planning or decision making, being able to move them into the somatic piece is always wonderful. And of course, if you think about the work we do in regulation, we talk a lot about the 4 different levels of regulation that we work within, and being able to move clients into regulation, but also pre-planning for that. We try to keep it as client focused as possible. We hold all clients capable. And what I mean by pre-planning is to ask them before they move into dysregulation what might work for them, and set a plan up so that if we are in session and they happen to start deregulating, we know that they've come up with something that we can access with them to say, okay, might this be a good time to use that exercise? Might this be a good time for you to vision your calm place? That's just a sample of it. I mean, there's much deeper work, as you can appreciate, the breathing, self-soothing, grounding, and being in present moment. We work within those. But great question. Thank you for asking it, Vanny. So the other thing that I think about, which is sort of along this line when we're working more within the trauma-informed lens at very specific moments, if we're looking at what we refer to in trauma-informed work, the compassion as a skill. A lot of times when people come to coaching, they are coming in because they have a great skill for empathy. And empathy is a wonderful thing to have. In trauma-informed coaching, we move much deeper into compassion. And the reason that compassion outweighs empathy for us is that empathy is actually part of compassion. I kind of think action and empathy really made compassion. So compassion is the love child of empathy and action. So in empathy, we say, yes, I understand what you're experiencing. Yes, I can actually relate to your feeling. But unfortunately, in empathy, we're not saying we're going to do anything about it because we can't. And for me, when I think about compassion, we're moving into a place where we can share empathy. When we have compassion, empathy is present. And compassion, empathy doesn't possess that will to want to change it, where compassion does. So it's through compassion, willingness to be part of the change, that we can actually partner with and imply that we have empathy and toward the situation, but we're also able to sit within the environment, hold the space for the client. And with compassion, we're saying, I'm willing to do something about this with you. And we again partner and create a change, not just to be in sameness with them, but to initiate change for the client themselves. So the trauma-informed coaching employs that skill. Stepping into those dark places and shining some light, of course, is what we do really well to help the client move forward in a positive way. So taking a behavior or situation that's unwanted and moving towards something that's more desired. And when we reflect on that, we can think empathy is great, compassion is ideal. So if we don't have that willingness to actually initiate change, then of course nothing changes. And compassion states we want to initiate change. So I think that skill is in every trauma-informed coaching environment. It's a must. Now, when we do this, we fully engage in compassion. There's further skill to be learned, and that has to do with the space that we're occupying for the client. You heard me mention it there very lightly. So if you haven't heard what holding space is about, excuse me, while my phone is going off. If you haven't heard what holding space is about, within the trauma-informed lens, what we do is it's very humbling for us to be able to hold space with the trauma-informed lens. Holding space for people states a few things for us. As in compassion, it states that we're going to sit here and we're going to honor anything that comes up for you. And anything that you have to share with me, I'm going to be okay with that. And I'm going to listen in this space without judgment. I'm going to be able to listen without needing to give you answers. I'm going to be able to bear witness to whatever it is that you want to share with me, only as much as you want to. It's not a requirement. You're able to share with me what you want. And I'm going to hold that space for the client to process what's coming up for them. So being able to hold space is also incredibly important when it comes to trauma-informed coaching. And there's nothing more endearing and more healing than to be able to share what is inside of us without someone else having to judge it. And I think that is another place where we move to in trauma-informed coaching. Some of these clients may be being listened to for the very first time. So being able to be heard for the first time can be quite empowering. So clients need to be heard and not lectured. They need to be heard and not judged. They just simply need to be heard. And that's a place where holding that space is quite powerful for them. And sometimes it's for the first time that they've ever been able to share their story with someone else. So we want to be able to hold the space without interrupting, without answering questions. And I think that skill in trauma-informed coaching, being able to hold space, is invaluable. And holding space isn't the most comfortable thing for people. We're not used to doing that. We can barely not comment when we're in an elevator for a minute going up and down on floors because we feel uncomfortable. Socially, we are trained to be able to engage with other people. So holding space is one of those things that is quite valuable, and so many things come out of it. So that is a real skill set when we think about being able to move into the trauma-informed environment and to be able to set for periods of time that might feel uncomfortable, because it helps the client process. They may not be directly in their prefrontal cortex. They may be in a fear brain, or it may have been flooded with stress and hormones and chemicals that has dislodged the prefrontal cortex. They may be sitting in a bit of a brain fog. So to be able to hold space for them to process helps them understand that you're not going to dive in too quickly. It helps build trust and rapport, but it also gives them the amount of time that they need to process what's going on in front of them. And that's where we start moving them into the part of post-traumatic growth that we so want them to be. So the other two things that I want to mention on this list that's very important when it comes to trauma-informed coaching, before we move into some questions if you have them, and those are the ability to let go of our ego within this work. So we have to make sure that we leave our ego out of the work that we're doing. So we want to be coaching at its purest form. And what I mean about leaving our ego out of the work is to let go of the outcome and to let go of the agenda. So we were very mindful when we move into this work that the clients control all of the outcome, all of the agenda. We hold them as whole and complete in whatever they're doing. So what we want to be able to do is to have them organize themselves to be self-sustaining. And in order to do that, and in order not to create a codependent relationship, we want them to be the masters of their own sessions. We're simply there to guide them, not control them. So leaving our agenda out of the session and leaving the outcome to the client is very useful when it comes to trauma-informed coaching. It helps them to be able to formulate their own conclusion, come to their own solutions, and create sustainability for the client. And as a result of it, of course, they end up building a great deal of confidence. And with confidence comes further healing. So they're able to step into a space of feeling in control of what's happening, knowing that control equals safety, and safety equals control. And as a result of that, of course, they will live, hopefully, a balanced life that they desire. So enough of me talking about these. I would like to hear from you guys if you have questions or insights around our conversation. Yeah, Robin.
Hey, sorry, I'm always slow on the button. Sorry. I work with neurodiverse couples. Commonly, one or both have had some history of trauma, and so that's kind of drawn me to your program with a lot of curiosity. I am wondering a few things on this side, but one is what examples of because I know I'm an ACC level coach. I have everything but a few credits to be PCC, and I think like one recording. So that's also in my mind. And so like, I guess the big question I have is what kind of examples of goals do you have that people co-create on that road to, I don't want to say healing trauma. I have a therapy background too. So I'm only providing coaching services. So I'm always like balancing and straddling that. I love that you said you're not healing, but because it's such a fine line, right? So what are those kind of goals that your clients are kind of creating on their own or coming to you with, because sometimes, I know people are coming in not even aware maybe of the depths of trauma that they've experienced or how they're presenting. So I guess that's where my curiosity, and I know you can just give examples really, but
yeah,
you have that.
You're asking what kind of goals the clients themselves are coming with, or what's the I want to make sure I'm answering what you asked. So when I think about what would be the typical client, the goals are always set by the client themselves. But if you're saying, hey, what are you usually seeing, Brad? I would say what we see a great deal of is maladaptive behaviors. And we see them over a long course of, whether it's acute, complex, pardon me, or chronic. And so what we're seeing are behaviors that may have existed years ago for them. We've seen quite a bit of course, with COVID. There's been a lot of maladaptive behaviors resurface as a result of this suppression from being able to go outside, from fear. The fear brain has been active for quite a while. We've seen some actions in society that have just been like, oh my gosh. So we have clients coming to us and saying, I'm behaving in ways that I haven't in the past. And so that's one of the areas that we look at. A lot of the other clients that we work with couples as well, and they come with a diagnosis already. And what they're doing is their main goals are to try to work within communication to be able to overcome whatever's coming up for them inside the relationship. So, Robin, I think you said that you work with couples.
I do. I work with couples where one or both have an autism spectrum diagnosis. And so typically one or both, and we're starting to see it more with both, have some background of trauma. We could talk for days about that because I'm very passionate about it, but yes. So you're saying, and that makes sense. So I think I'm in the right place because I think that I get what you're saying about how the communication is so key to that bigger picture of where any couple is going or any system is trying to move.
Yeah. So what I see, yes. And it's like, I find that they need platforming for general communication, because usually what happens if there's a difficulty within any environment, whether there is a sign of autism, ADHD, trauma, post-traumatic stress, whatever it is, it generally breaks down in communication. And that tends to be quite a bit of what we're doing. And then we're looking at the trauma-informed lens and going, what are these other nuances on top of all of this other stuff that we want to be aware of when we're working with the clients? So building the, the shareholders agreement within the couple, looking at how to develop connection and love, looking at how to work within values and beliefs so that they are on the same page. And then, of course, contribution to move them into a place of being able to sustain and then look outside themselves and help a bigger picture. Because moving outside of ourselves sometimes can be very helpful in, knowing who we are and how we show up in the environment.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome, Robin. Thanks for the question. Who else might have a question or input or ideas for us this morning?
Hey, Brad, I'm Kate. We got a quick question for you.
Hey, Kate. Thanks.
Absolutely. So thanks for hosting this. It's great to have an opportunity to listen a bit more and ask questions. Regarding the top skills of, you'd mentioned immersed listening as a skill that's necessary for this type of coaching. How do you distinguish immersed listening from speculation? And how do you avoid inserting your own bias into immersed listening?
Yeah, so when I think about immersed listening, I'm listening from 3 different levels of what's happening. So what you're doing when you think about immersed listening, you're picking up details about what the client's telling you. So it's not speculation, you're taking material. I always think about it as being able to listen beyond what's being said, the way that it's being said, the tone of voice, and the reactions that they have. Clients can move into dropping small bits of information around family, how they were brought up, what the traumatic event was, even though we asked that we don't need to know it. It's not important. So they will start dropping those pieces of information. What we do is we ask questions back around those tidbits, around those small pieces. And what we're doing is we're trying to work within the coaching environment to evoke awareness around those smaller pieces. It's really interesting. I heard you say something about you got that from your mother. Could you tell me a bit more about that? What is it that you got from her? I just noticed you say something about when you were younger, you would never have been allowed to do that. Could you just expand on that a little bit? What did that mean? So we're asking these questions because what ends up happening, of course, in cultural, social, economic settings, we develop beliefs about how our environments are. So I'll use it for instance that's even out of trauma. We can look at some executive coaches that go into the CEO positions, and there's still limiting beliefs that they have to deal with if they've come from, say, a place of poverty or a place of, social construct that they weren't accepted. So there's always these limiting beliefs that we work with. In trauma-informed coaching, a great deal of the time when we have trauma, if we have an imprint, we get locked into negative beliefs much more than we get locked into positive ones. And that's usually because we felt like we had no control in the moment of the imprint. Our body did something we didn't understand, even though in our work, we end up, I don't like the word normal, but we end up explaining the fact that your body has one purpose, that's to keep you alive. And when your body moved into taking you maybe offline in the prefrontal cortex, your body still had control of what was going on, whether that was fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, doesn't matter. It's still working for one purpose, that's to keep the organism alive. So sometimes we attach the lack of control, then feeds these other limiting beliefs that say, I'm not good enough. I really don't know who I am authentically. If we see in service, if we think about service areas, police, first responders, military, firefighters, they're requested to do work that might not go against their moral compass. So then there's also that layering on about who they are as people. Those are the things we pick up without giving our bias into what's being said. It's simply a way of listening within what might the traumatic event been and how did it affect the person? What was the economical, social, cultural environment that the client grew up in? And how do they hold their environment or their beliefs spiritually and philosophically? And they'll let us know that if we're listening. And then we have this beautiful insight into the client to make these huge shifts. So we're not guessing at what they might be saying. We're not diagnosing or analyzing what they're saying. We're listening and picking up on those deeper pieces. We're setting in that true coach position where I'm not listening to you to think about what I'm going to ask you next or what I'm going to say. We're listening to what you're saying to be able to create those precise, short questions that have the biggest impact. You just mentioned your father twice. Is there something about your father that you wanted to say here? I did. I didn't even know that. So it's sort of like we go in that pattern. So we're bringing a really nice, deep awareness to them about what's going on. And that assists with the shifts that they're looking for.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate the detail there.
Yeah, nice. Good question. We never want to analyze or diagnose. Morgan.
This might be a question you get a lot and could be tired of answering, but I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the differences between trauma-informed coaching and trauma therapy. Admittedly, I'm a trauma therapist, and all of what you're talking about is obviously stuff that I do. And so I'm just curious, like that nuance, that line, what someone might need to be aware of as they get more into coaching.
Yeah, I think about I can't speak to the trauma-informed therapy lens because I'm not a trauma-informed therapist. What we do in trauma-informed coaching, though, is that when I think about therapy and clinical work, I often think about the rules that you're guided by. So there are these areas where in trauma-informed coaching, what we do is we allow the client to create the environment. We do not tell them what to do. We do not advise them what to do. We do not step in any mentor role with the client. We hold them completely capable and they're coming from where they are. When we think about clinical or therapy, the differences are in coaching, I ask. In therapy, clinical, they tell. Some of them. I'm thinking the clinical lens. If I think about psychology counseling, those things, they are there to assist the client in moving into a different area based on the knowledge that the therapist or the counselor or the professional has. So much of the time they'll be spending telling, we'll be spending asking. The other thing that we do in trauma-informed coaching that is versus clinical or some therapeutic work is that we'll spend less time, very little time, almost no time moving into the past. And what we do in trauma-informed coaching is that we hold a platform from a good Gestaltian view is that there's only one moment, and that's the moment here and now. So when clients come to me and they want to tell me their story, I am happy to hear it. But I will also let them know that it will have no impact except for what you're holding moving forward, because I'm not going to analyze your story, because in trauma-informed coaching, I can't change the past. And in therapy and clinical, they'll oftentimes spend months, if not years, analyzing the process of the past. And so in trauma-informed coaching, because I know that I can't change that, I'm start from the here and now and move forward in that lens. So the differences for me are that we are not consultants, we don't control, we ask questions, we guide, we don't tell. So it becomes a much more, we still have the level of professionalism of a coach. I'm not there to be their friend. I'm very clear about that. If I wanted friends, I'd go out for coffee. If they wanted friends, they can go out for coffee. We're there to hold them responsible as complete and whole as they are, unbroken. And the other thing that can happen is that in some therapeutic places, because of diagnosis, because of clinical practice, they can get very tied into the label. And we work very much around woundology and victimization and try to move people away from that, because that can tie people into non-healing very quickly when they identify as their broken leg instead of they have a broken leg. So those are a little bit of the differences. There's a few more I could peel on forever, but.
That is super helpful. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Thanks, Morgan. Excellent question, by the way. Ariane?
Yes. So can everybody hear me okay? I don't have my.
You're sounding good.
Okay, because I don't have my big mic on it. I'm relying on my computer. And if at any time that changes, let me know. my question is more at the levels of the training, because there's steps. Like I think there's the and I was really curious, and I think you've answered my question through what you were demonstrating, and especially thank you, Morgan, for going before me with your question, because I'm in that space. That's where all my teaching as a neurolinguistic programming coach is. The client is the navigator. He's the captain. I just, you know, help him navigate. I'm the one, you know, giving him the flashlight. and so I know there's two levels. And I was debating whether it was worth, like, what's in the two levels. I don't know if this is a good forum for this, or
What two levels are you referring to?
well, your program, you have like I can't remember the name.
Trauma-informed coaching basics and trauma-informed coaching certificate.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you are already a trained coach, you can come to us and be trained in trauma-informed coaching. You do have to have an accreditation through the International Coaching Federation or something equivalent.
Okay.
So you have to already know how to be a coach. The trauma-informed coaching basic is for people who want to come and get their trauma-informed certification and first they have to learn how to be a coach. Sue, do you want to add a little more here?
Nope,
Susan,
you're doing great.
yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
Susan does our enrollment, so I always go to her.
Okay.
So it'll be about learning to be a coach before, it's sort of like learning how to crawl before we can walk or run in the TICC. The TIC is quite an intensive course.
Okay. Okay. So okay, because I remember you mentioning this before. So I would need because I have an accreditation, and it's recognized by the ICF, so the International Coaching Federation.
Yep.
And but do I need my ACC before I can take? No. Okay.
No. So as
Okay.
long as you
I
have
have
done
over 1,000 hours of, you know, it's just, but it's not accredited yet by the International Coaching Federation.
Right.
But I am working towards that.
Right. Yeah.
With one of your, yeah. So, okay. So that was my question, because like, as much as like I, you know, and redoing the TIC, I guess the basic course would just, you know, fine tune my skills. Right. So I don't, you know, or hearing it differently, hearing it in English would be also very different for me. So, okay. I just, all right.
Yeah, if the main concern that we have, of course, is people moving into trauma-informed coaching certification that have no coaching background.
Okay.
And the whole program itself is based so solely on not only psychoeducation, but also being able to use that towards coaching. So you can appreciate, if you have no coaching background, doing just the TICC itself,
Okay.
then would leave you in a place that may feel less than comfortable.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
But having a good coaching based background, I already have the building blocks, the foundation, if you want, to
Correct.
be able to. Okay.
If it's a recognized course, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the RS. Yeah, I'm really bad with
Acronyms.
and things
Yeah.
like that. I'm like, I'll
No
describe
problem.
them to you. I have no idea what the acronyms are.
No
Okay.
problem.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe I could have Susan look at my
Yeah. Susan is the
particular, 'cause I think
enroller,
maybe-
so.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Thank you.
absolutely. Just send
'Cause
them
if I-
to me or book a call with me and we can have a conversation.
Because I think, yeah, if I go any further, then I'll just be just me and not everybody else, I think. So, all right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Vanny.
Thanks, Brad, Bonnie. So
Bonnie?
one of the challenges or resistance that I often encounter with leadership is associating trauma or trauma-informed practices and work with therapy. And so kind of how would you message, or how would you frame kind of like the 2 or 3 big benefits of trauma-informed coaching from a traditional kind of coaching lens? Like what separates it, or what, like, how would you pitch that?
Well, I think the first thing obviously is that you have the understanding of what trauma is, how it reacts in the body, how it shows up. So that is one thing. Being able to have the trauma-informed nuance obviously is one particular thing. The other one is the confidence that you will build in the course in being able to sit in that arena. So not everyone can sit in that arena. Sometimes people don't like having hard conversations. So being able to learn how to sit there, how to implement the trauma-informed coaching lens, and to understand what it is you're looking for and what you're not looking for, not diagnosing, but being very aware of what's coming up for the client and when it's not in your wheelhouse. And then the bigger, but any coaching for me should be like this. If you are a true coach, the client is always in control. And it's that we don't fix or heal, that they are in control of their own destiny. And, that if they don't put the work in, then they won't get the work out. But if they do, we're here to actually assist them in doing that. And, not everyone knows that something that might be coming up for them is trauma-based. So just being able to have the nuances alone, or being able to understand what does exist or come up for people can be greatly important. But for me, if I think about that, we're looking at clients, of course, that have come from clinical diagnosis. We work a lot with people that have already been diagnosed. So being able to have the knowledge to be able to understand polyvagal theory, the window of tolerance, to be able to understand the differences within the nervous system, how they react, how they affect our body, is sometimes that added psychoeducation not only keeps the coach themselves in coach position without having a derogatory reaction, but definitely the client. And then, of course, adding on some of the somatic work, being able to understand, some of the processes we can do within the moment with the client to help them regulate. Those would be some of the things I think. Bonnie, correct? Thanks, Bonnie. Kate.
Yeah, thanks. This goes back to a couple of questions ago to build on that. So I would be coming into the program with no coaching background at all. I'm a scientist now. So this would be a complete career shift for me. So if I enrolled in the program, I would go through the TICB, TICC, and then currently looking at the third element of the program. So would going through the program prepare me to obtain my certificates, or would I come out of the program certificate in hand?
You'll come out with a certificate in hand from going through the process, but to obtain your accreditation, the program would prepare you for that. And so it's called a level 1 now. So the level 1 would take you from basic coaching, then it would take you through the 40-hour intensive TICC, where again, psychoeducation leaning into the coaching. So you'll learn exercises and how to work with clients who are activated, what have you. And then you would move into what's called the ICFM, which is the International Coaching Federation mentorship within our company. And what that does is prepare you to make your transcript and recording to submit to the ICF for accreditation. And that requires, I think it's 100 hours still, Susan?
Yeah, 100 client hours.
100 client hours. We also have a program within our level 1 that the people that move into the ICFM actually will be coaching some of the TICB students, which is the basic, and also some of the TICC students. So that gives them paid hours toward their 100 hours while they're building their practice. And then in the mentorship, what you do is you will work with other people and a mentor coach to help you develop your skill sets further, to make sure that you hit the points that the ICF are looking for the ACC accreditation. And we also do a review at a PCC marker level to make sure that you are in the level or very close to prepared for that particular submission.
Okay. And are there tests that go along with the ICF accreditation, or is it just the submission of that packet that you're?
Yeah, there is a acknowledgement test that goes along with the ICF, and you'll see quite a bit of information online about that. The ICF create that exam separate, but it's on being a coach and the knowledge. It's called I think it's the knowledge assessment. I see knowledge assessment.
The competency, coaching
Thank you.
competency, the competency to test your knowledge and your skills, right? I'm in the process.
Yes. Good.
Yeah. So Kate, when you join in as a TICB student, you're going to be able to choose an ICF student, an ICFM student, and you're going to be able to do 3 free coaching sessions with them. And then when you're in ICFM on the other side of the training, then you get to do up to 10 hours of coaching with the TICB, TICC students. And then it's when you go into the ICF. So you actually end up holding 2 certifications. You hold a trauma-informed coaching certification. And then once you have completed ICFM and you've done your 100 client hours and you have joined the ICF and taken their exam on that side of the house, then you will have a certification as an accredited certified coach as well.
Okay. And can you, because I heard the acronym PCC, what is PCC?
PCC is the next level up. So that's a professional certified coach. That is somebody that has done 125 hours of coach specific training and 500 client hours.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions while we're here?
And Kate, for you, the next TICB class would be May the 3rd. And it will run on Wednesdays from 9 a.m. till 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So LA or Vancouver time.
Okay. I thought when we met last time, we had talked about an October start time.
Okay, then, yep, there is one as well then too. That one is an evening class. Is that what you're looking for, is an evening class?
Yeah, evening class was,
Perfect,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
October the
Cool.
12th.
And then one more question while I'm off mute. So I know in the States, there's a board certification for coaching as well. Does this program offer any support for that type of certification? And what's your
No, there are 2 different types of accreditations when you go into, so we chose to be accredited through the International Coaching Federation because that is the larger of all of the coaching accreditation organizations out there in the world. And
Sure.
it's the one that's most widely recognized.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Any more questions as we come to our end here today within the hour? We're at the top of the hour. Any last questions or insights? Susan, do you have any offerings for people that are on here today?
Yep. What we can do is for anybody that is in here, if you are looking to join within the 2023 cohorts, any of them, regardless of whether it's the starting with TICB or just TICC, then we can offer a $250, I guess, scholarship. And what you would do is when you go to join or do a referral with us, if you're looking for information, they'll ask for a referral code, and just put in MTHS for moving the human spirit. So MTHS 250.
Okay, great. I stuck that in the chat for anyone that's interested.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I really want to thank you guys all for being here today. Thank you for some of you I've seen and have been students of ours and are associates. So thank you for being here. All of the new people, I want to welcome you here and thank you for showing up. So of course, after we're done this call today, please feel free to reach out to Susan or myself if you have any further questions. Sometimes if you're like me, you've gone off the call and it's like, I really should have asked 6 more questions, but I didn't. So please feel free to do that. Otherwise, take care of yourself today and have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
You
Thank you.